Seol Eun-Seol, our lovely female lead, finds herself in a lip lock with none other than Yi-Hyeok, South Korea's most sought-after actor. But here's the kicker. They're not even dating. Eun-Seol's clearly confused, wondering why she's kissing someone she's not into. Yi-Hyeok checks in, asking if she's okay, and she gives him a tentative nod. He takes this as a cue to tease her with his lips, but Eun-Seol puts the brakes on, asking if he's not breaking some kind of rule by touching her. Yi-Hyeok's face remains straight for a hot second before he cracks a charming smile. He confesses that things are different with Eun-Seol. With her, there are no rules. The chemistry between them is undeniable, and they get back to kissing. Just as things are heating up, they suddenly stop and look directly at the camera, and we realize they're just actors doing their thing. As it turns out, Yi-Hyeok is a huge deal in South Korea. His shows are always hits, and his endorsements sell out in record time. He's the whole package. Talented, influential, and ridiculously charming. And Eun-Seol? She's about to find herself caught up in a whirlwind romance with this superstar. Our girl's living in a completely different world, one that's far removed from the glitz and glamour of Yi-Hyeok's life. As the grandson of the NB Group, one of South Korea's top 10 corporations, he's born with a diamond-encrusted spoon in his mouth. We're talking next-level privilege here. He's the sole heir and undisputed successor, always making headlines and dominating online forums. The masses are basically obsessed with him. She didn't know much about him, except that he always seemed cold and unapproachable. She never imagined she'd see him smile, let alone kiss her. This entire situation is surreal. She never thought they'd meet, talk, or get intimate. He breaks the spell, asking what's on her mind. She snaps back to reality, reminding him that they've gotten the photos they needed for their fake relationship, and she's ready to bail. Yep, you read that right. They're in a pretend romance, and things are about to get interesting. Our girl asks him to call her, then tries to make a quick exit. But he's not having it. He grips her hand, pulling her back in. He's got this playful, teasing glint in his eye as he asks if she's really going to ditch her lover just like that. He claims he saw a cuter side of her before, but she's clueless about what he's talking about. Their story is pretty wild, with a backstory that's even more complicated. Yi-Hyeok, the megastar, and Seol Eun-Seol, a nameless actress who used to be a child star. They're reunited in adulthood, thanks to a twisted fate that's brought them together once more. Three ladies, the K-pop stars known as the ABC Girls, are stranded in the woods. Their old van broke down, leaving them with only 3 hours to find a solution before their event. One of the girls freaks out, complaining about the hassle of countryside schedules. Another one blames the stupid schedule for the car breaking down. They're newcomers to the big stage, and it shows. They could have done way better. One of them jokingly suggests they should have scheduled the event in North Korea instead. Their young manager shuts them down, saying they're not yet at that level. His words sting, making the girls feel belittled. They ask about the update on their insurance company, hoping to find a way out of this mess. The manager tells the ABC Girls that he's called the agency, and they're sending Miss Kim Yumi's manager to the rescue. But instead of being relieved, the girls look worried. Apparently, Kim Yumi has a rep for being super scary and difficult to work with. The manager tries to reassure them that it's just her manager coming, not the actress herself, and that her name is Seol Eun-Seol. The girls aren't impressed. They just want to get to their event on time. They care less about her name. They just want to deliver on time. Just then, a town bus zooms in and stops right in front of them. The door swings open, and out steps our girl, looking all casual and friendly. She greets the ABC Girls and introduces herself. Now they're in transit. The girls are beyond amazed at the interior of the bus. Our girl turned the inside of this bus into a costume room. She says she's set up all that they need. They won't need to worry about prepping for their event. The young man asks when she had the time to prepare their costumes and makeup, and she just says it's no big deal. It's basic for her. Our girl says they shouldn't be worried about small details. They can all take naps and get ready for their event after resting. She assures them they won't be late. The ABC Girls are totally amazed by Seol Eun-Seol's skills. They're all thinking the same thing. This person is seriously good at their job. Like, the best. And it shows, because they make it to their event on time and deliver a flawless performance. The young manager is super grateful, thanking Eun-Seol for her help. She brushes it off, saying she gets paid for this, but he's still impressed. He tells her that what she does is amazing, and he knows that normally people can't handle all the details she took care of. The more he thinks about it, the more amazing she seems. Eun-Seol keeps her cool, but reveals that she has to be good at this stuff because she's limited to behind-the-scenes work. You can sense a hint of defeat in her voice. It's clear that she's capable of so much more, but for some reason, she's stuck in this role. After the show, the ABC girls are still raving about Eun-Seol. They wish she was their manager from now on. The young manager agrees, saying that everyone seems to click with her. The girls praise Yeol some more, saying she's the most precise person they've ever met. Not only did she get them to their event on time, but she also remembered their coffee habits. They're joking that she must be some kind of AI-enhanced human or something. One of the girls, A, starts talking about her own struggles. She had a cameo role in a drama today, but it was a total mess. She kept messing up on set, despite practicing beforehand. The crew told her to practice some more, and she's feeling really down about it. She's on the verge of tears, saying that she's trying her best, but they keep getting delayed because of her. She's feeling like she's not talented enough. She was at her breaking point on set, wondering why she kept stuttering over her lines. She even overheard the crew saying that ex-idols aren't cut out for acting. She was already feeling down, and that just made things worse. She'd been telling herself that she just doesn't have the talent. But then Eun-Seol appears, giving A warm hug. She tells A that she was worried about her, so she came to check in. Eun-Seol offers some words of encouragement, telling A that she's just a newcomer and doesn't need to put so much pressure on herself. Seol Eun-Seol's advice is pure gold. She tells A that the more she tries to do better, the more mistakes she'll make because of the pressure. Instead, Eun-Seol suggests that A needs to make acting her world first, and as she takes on more roles, she'll gradually start to widen her world. It's wisdom like this that makes Eun-Seol seem like a total rock star. A takes Eun-Seol's advice to heart and steps back onto the set with newfound confidence. She totally nails it, taking everyone by storm. Later, she's complimented for her good work, and she can't help but smile when she thinks about the director praising her for the first time. She's super grateful to Eun-Seol for being there for her and offering such valuable advice. The guy asks if Eun-Seol is now coaching acting, and Aizal, yeah, there's nothing she can't do. It's clear that Eun-Seol is a bit of an enigma. She just showed up out of nowhere, helped them out, and seems to be amazingly good at everything. Ai's curious about Eun-Seol's background, wondering who exactly this mysterious woman is. One of the ABC girls chimes in, saying she's curious about Eun-Seol's looks, since she's always wearing a hat. It's like, what's she hiding under there? A jokes that Seol Eun-Seol is like a masked superhero, and just then, our girl walks up to them, asking how everyone's doing. They fill her in on their relaxing afternoon, and one of the girls notices something on Eun-Seol's hat. She takes it off, and the ABC girls are stunned. Our female lead is gorgeous. She mentions that she didn't bring a spare hat, so she'll have to stay like this for the rest of the day, without it. The girls stay speechless for seconds. It's almost like she's standing in a spotlight or something. Just look at her glow. One of the ABC girls slams the table in disbelief. She really can't believe Seol Eun-Seol is just a normal manager. She says there's no way that Beauty is a normal person. The young man laughs. He says it's clear they don't know anything. The girls talk about it to each other. One suggests they search about our girl on the internet. Another one says there's something the young man knows that he's not telling. Finally, he speaks. He says he'd never meant to dig too much about her past, and all but there's a reason Miss Eun-Seol has a lot of secrets. The ABC girls pay no attention to him as they continue their search. One of them pauses. She's seen something. It's not what they'd all imagined. Seol Eun-Seol is an attempted criminal. Shocking, right? Seol Eun-Seol's past is uncovered, and the ABC girls are shocked. It turns out she was a former child actor known as Ji-Eun-Seol. The girls are stunned, scrolling through article after article online. One video pops up, showing Ji-Eun-Seol confessing to a crime. She temporarily retired from the entertainment industry after the incident. The girls can't wrap their heads around it. The same talented, loving Seol Eun-Seol they know is now working as a manager. But there's more. The victim from back then was none other than actor Dan Yi-Hyeok. Cameras and reporters swarm around Ji-Eun-Seol, the prodigy child actress, as she's about to give an interview. Everyone's anticipating her rise to stardom, but the interviewer throws her off with a strange question. Ji-Eun-Seol's taken aback, confused. Before she can respond, someone throws an object at her and she falls to the ground. The people around her turn hostile. Repeating hurtful words, she cries out for help, tears streaming down her face. Seol Eun-Seol wakes up from her slumber, gasping for air. It's a recurring nightmare that still haunts her. She tries to calm down, but she can't shake off the feeling of unease. Another restless night ahead of her. Her alarm rings at 4 a.m., and she's up, ready to face the day. She's tired of being haunted by this dream and is determined to move on. Seol Eun-Seol walks into the sitting room and finds her dad chillin' on the couch. She's like, "Hey, why are you still up?" And he's looking pretty young, too. He mentions that he rescheduled his business trip, but that's not important right now. He asks if she's leaving already, and she's all, "Yeah, I've got a schedule to keep." Her dad is concerned, asking if she's pushing herself too hard, but she's not having it. Her dad brings up the past, saying it wasn't long ago that she couldn't even make eye contact with people. He suggests she get a job outside of the entertainment industry, but she doesn't respond. Instead, she lightens the mood with a hug and tells him she's completely recovered, taking her meds and all. She's trying to reassure him that she's got this, and with a bright smile, she puts on a hat, saying no one recognizes her in public with it on. She's doing her best to convince her dad she's going to be all right, and then she dashes out. But he's still looking worried, and it's clear he's not entirely convinced. Oh, and it's her birthday, and he didn't even get a chance to say happy birthday on time. The ABC girls are still digging up dirt on Seol Eun-Seol, watching clips of her confessing to a crime and apologizing to Dan Yi-Hyeok. Our girl sneaks up on them like a ninja and clears her throat to announce her presence. The girls immediately put down their phones and start trembling. Seol Eun-Seol apologizes for interrupting their video session and wants to set the record straight. She's not a bad person like the news made her out to be, so they've got nothing to fear. The girls quickly apologize for snooping around online, and the young man chimes in, saying he told them to just ask Seol Eun-Seol directly. Our girl asks what they're up to, and the girls mention they're preparing for a talk show. They invite Seol Eun-Seol to join in, and one of the girls asks if she's still in touch with Dan Yi-Hyeok. Seol Eun-Seol takes her time responding, and the young man wonders if they can just ask her stuff like that. He notices Seol Eun-Seol's face doesn't look too good. A jumps in, saying Seol Eun-Seol can pass on the question. She was just curious. Our girl says they're strangers. That's why she's refraining from speaking freely. Naturally, they won't know each other well so soon. Seol Eun-Seol's thoughts are a mix of nostalgia and frustration. She remembers when she was in the spotlight, chasing her dreams, but now it all feels pointless. Although our girl still feels that hunger to show the world a piece of her, but it's not so easy after her past. She couldn't even bring herself to quit her job as an actor manager. She really is that much attached to the industry. The director calls on Miss A since it's time to shoot. I runs along. Our girl sees herself in the youngster. She was just like her. In fact, she was much younger then. Not working in the entertainment industry is just difficult for her. Seol Eun-Seol thinks about her life. There was a time when I worked with Dan Yi-Hyeok. It's all meaningless. The more famous the person becomes, the more infamous she becomes as a person who made a mistake. Someone walks up to her. It's a tall, handsome figure. He says he remembers her. She turns in his direction with shock in her eyes at the sight of him. Everyone else is hit with a wave of shock and surprise. It's actor Dan Yi-Hyeok. They're all amazed, but they manage to say hello to Dan Yi-Hyeok. He says it's been a while since he last saw our girl. She says nothing in response. He was her colleague. Yi-Hyeok and Ji-Eun-Seol were supposed to be siblings in the role. The little boy asks if she doesn't like it that way. That little boy is Dan Yi-Hyeok, present-day actor. He's done very well for himself. There are so many great things said about him, but our girl has done her very best to avoid him all this time. In the end, he's the one responsible for changing her life. She wonders why he talked to her first but says hello too. He asks if she's a performer now like the ABC girls. Our girl says she's just a manager. He claims he didn't hear her too well. The ABC girls notice the tension in the air. Dan Yi-Hyeok says he's somewhat disappointed with the company for not using someone with talent such as herself. It's like he's complimenting her, but she just wonders what he's talking about. She'd thought he disliked her. The director walks up to Dan Yi-Hyeok and greets him with a title that commands respect: Chairman Dan Yi-Hyeok. They chat for a bit, and then the director asks Seol Eun-Seol to leave and wait in the car. He doesn't want the chairman to notice her, but it's too late for that. Seol Eun-Seol can't help but stare in their direction, her mind racing with thoughts. She thinks to herself, everyone probably remembers the incident from 15 years ago, and now they'd rather be friends with Dan Yi-Hyeok than be around me. The two men walk ahead, discussing something like old friends. Seol Eun-Seol puts two and two together, realizing that Chanlan Entertainment must be producing this drama, given the director's cozy behavior with Dan Yi-Hyeok, who just so happens to be the CEO of Chanlan Entertainment. As Dan Yi-Hyeok takes his leave, he turns back to Seol Eun-Seol and smiles. He says it was great to see her today, and that he'd like to meet up again soon. Seol Eun-Seol doesn't look too thrilled about that idea. The young man's gaze lingers on her for a moment before he walks away. Later, the ladies are at a cafe, and the ABC girls look like they're bursting with questions. Seol Eun-Seol asks if they've got something on their minds and tells them it's okay to ask. The girls seem hesitant, but one of them finally speaks up, asking if Seol Eun-Seol really did try to hurt Dan Yi-Hyeok. Seol Eun-Seol's gaze drops, and she says that what they saw on the news was true. A jumps in, asking if there's more to the story that Seol Eun-Seol can't talk about. I recalls that when Seol Eun-Seol met with Dan Yi-Hyeok earlier, he didn't look at her like someone who tried to hurt him. Instead, Seol Eun-Seol looked scared. The ABC girls agree not to push Seol Eun-Seol for more information if she's not comfortable sharing. A assures Seol Eun-Seol that they've got her back, just like she's always had theirs. They're not about to abandon her now. Seol Eun-Seol flashes a smile and says she can't reveal everything, but she'll share a secret with the ABC girls. She confesses that she has a serious case of stage fright, which stems from the harsh criticism she received after the incident and apology video. As a 12-year-old, she was scarred by the intense backlash, and it's still affecting her. The ABC girls nod in understanding, relating to the struggle of dealing with harsh words from critics. One of them comments that it's not surprising, given the cutthroat nature of the industry, where powerful conglomerates like Dan Yi-Hyeok's can easily frame an innocent person. Seol Eun-Seol quickly defends Dan Yi-Hyeok, saying it's not like that. The girls ask if it's not hard for her to answer questions like these, given her nonchalant demeanor. Seol Eun-Seol takes a sip of her coffee, and her expression turns somber. She admits that it's really hard for her, and the emotions she's tried to suppress are flooding back. She once dreamed of shining like the ABC girls following her passions, but fate had other plans. That incident ruined her life. Everything happened so quickly back then. She remembers seeing Do-yoon putting something in a bottle, but she was half asleep and woke up to a blurry scene. Seol Eun-Seol was just 12 years old when the incident went down. She and Dan Yi-Hyeok were cast as siblings in a domestic sitcom drama called A Conglomerate Family. It was Dan Yi-Hyeok's debut role, and he was already making waves as a supporting actor. The drama was a huge hit, and Seol Eun-Seol's mom is scrolling through her phone, reading about the show. She's clearly upset, saying that the article only mentions Dan Yi-Hyeok, like he's the only star that matters. She throws her phone away, frustrated that the writer is obsessed with Dan Yi-Hyeok. She complains about how much screen time he got, wondering why they even cast her daughter. Her attention turns to young Do-yoon, and she starts yelling at him. She says he messed up in the last episode, lagging behind Dan Yi-Hyeok and ruining the whole scene. She asks him if he really thinks he can make it in the industry with his current attitude. Do-yoon and Seol Eun-Seol are both siblings, and their mom is their manager. She's a former actress who's living vicariously through her kids, determined to fulfill her own unrealized dreams. The kids are overwhelmed by her intensity. As the days go by, their mom becomes increasingly obsessed with the director and Dan Yi-Hyeok. She's always storming off to confront the director, leaving her kids to practice their vocals. The kids try to calm her down, but it only sparks more madness in her eyes. She grabs Do-yoon's shoulders, telling him to listen carefully. She says they're both fish that can't be locked up, stars with huge potential to rise to the top. But the entertainment industry is like a scarce pond with too many fish and not enough food. Only one fish will survive, and she's determined that it'll be her son. She looks him dead in the eye, her gaze wild with ambition. He's her masterpiece. Star potential, talent, and a family background that supports everything. That's her little boy's competition. Mom says if he can't keep up with any of the things she mentioned, then he'll starve to death with time. She said his hard work might not pay him at the long run. That's not something nice to tell a little boy. Look at the horror in his eyes. Our girl thinks her mom pushed young Do-yoon to his limits with that speech. Things weren't any good at the set. Even with a relentless shooting schedule, his screen time was still less than that of his little sister. Our girl had started acting later than him. Additionally, Do-yoon had an inferiority complex of being a substitute for Dan Yi-Hyeok. From then on, things went bad so quick. The incident happened as if it was planned. Her brother knew that Dan Yi-Hyeok had an allergy, but he intentionally put the allergens in his water bottle that night. Didn't take too long. There was panic in the air at the set. Dan Yi-Hyeok had passed out. Someone screams for a medic. Standing in the midst of it all was Do-yoon, looking straight at his competition, lying on the floor unconscious. He had seizures from a severe reaction to the allergens. Little Eun-Seol couldn't believe her eyes. She runs after her brother, straight up demands to know if he's got something to do with what happened to Dan Yi-Hyeok. She's certain she saw him put something in the room back then. He owns up to his evil deed. Her brother asks what he should do with tears flowing down his face. He says he only did it because he wants to do acting too. Just like his sister. As Dan Yi-Hyeok was having a seizure, his grandfather, Chairman Dan of the NB Group, was furious. Sooner than later, Do-yoon runs away from home and their mom is frantic. She questions Seol Eun-Seol about it, falling to her knees in desperation. The little girl is shocked to see her mom like this. Her mom pleads with Seol Eun-Seol to save her brother, saying it's something only she can do. The little girl is eager to help, not liking to see her mom so down. She's willing to do whatever it takes to get her mom back on her feet. Her mom tells her that if she records an apology video and sends it to Dan Yi-Hyeok, he'll forgive and forget. But it's clear that her mom is manipulating her into making the video. She calls Seol Eun-Seol her good daughter to get her to agree to the recording. It's a peak villainous vibe from her mom. She promises that the video won't be released anywhere, but Seol Eun-Seol is desperate to make her mom happy and become a real family. In reality, Seol Eun-Seol has just made the worst decision of her life. She makes the video, claiming to have feelings for Dan Yi-Hyeok and saying that's why she did what she did. But the truth is, Seol Eun-Seol still doesn't know if her mom lied about the video not being released. And then the unthinkable happens. The apology video is all over the news. Little Ji Eun-Seol is forced to temporarily retire from the entertainment industry. And just like that, Seol Eun-Seol's life comes to a screeching halt. It's a sad reality. Her life stopped blooming before it even had a chance to begin. Seol Eun-Seol is having a rough night, drowning her sorrows in booze because she feels terrible for the ABC girls. They were shocked by her confession, and she had to lie to them, which is eating away at her. She can't help but think that the saying, "time heals all wounds," is a total lie. To her, time doesn't heal wounds, it just turns them into scars that become a permanent part of you. Those scars don't heal, they just become ingrained in you. As she sits on the ground battling her emotions, she recalls the apology video that ruined her life. She's filled with regret, repeating "I'm sorry" over and over. It's her birthday, June 18th, but it's a sad one. Nobody has wished her a happy birthday. That's just so sad. As our girl walks down the road, the passersby compliment her looks. They discuss whether to approach her and say hi or not. One of the young men walks up to her and says hello. Next minute, he says she looks familiar. It triggered some sort of reaction from our female lead as she completely freaks out. Today's got to be one of her very worst birthdays till date. It's just one of those days she somehow has to get through. She blames herself for all her misfortune. Our girl arrives home. She says hello to her dad, but remembers he's not home since he'd planned to leave for his business trip tonight. Something's off. She notices a man's shoe at the door. A voice calls on her, and she turns her attention in the direction of the voice. It's Do-yoon. He asks what took her so long. She's surprised to see him here. Our girl asks how he got in. He says it wasn't at all difficult to guess her passcode. It's always been her birthday. Seol Eun-Seol doesn't even blink. She stares at him like he's grown a second head, trying to process how one person can pack so much arrogance into a single conversation. The audacity isn't just dripping. It's pouring. Do-yoon stands there, looking too pleased with himself, like this whole exchange is a script he's already written, and she's just meant to follow along. He pulls out a card like it's some grand gesture, holding it out with all the grace of a smug prince. There's no hesitation in his movements, no doubt in his voice. He's made up his mind, and now it's her turn to play her part. Except she's not about to. Not today. Not ever. The silence between them is loud, a tension-filled pause that says more than words ever could. But he doesn't stop. Oh no, he keeps going, layering insult upon insult like he's building a monument to his own ego. His confidence is so blinding it's almost funny, almost. It's like watching someone walk straight into a trap they don't even know is there. Seol Eun-Seol stays rooted, refusing to react. Her face is unreadable, but the fire in her eyes is hard to miss. This isn't the little girl he remembers, the one who'd bend over backward for approval. This is a woman who's been through hell and clawed her way out, and right now, she's deciding whether his words are worth the energy it would take to respond, or if silence would be the bigger blow. Do-yoon doesn't realize the storm he's standing in the middle of. Or maybe he does, and he just doesn't care. Either way, the card stays between them, like some unspoken challenge. And Seol Eun-Seol, she's not about to back down. Do-yoon stands there, delivering his monologue like some villain in a soap opera, and Eun-Seol can't believe her ears. He's really sitting here, in her house, tearing her down like it's his day job. Marriage equals happiness? Really? He's lucky she doesn't laugh in his face. Then he takes it further, calling her good-looking, like that's supposed to sweeten the insult. She's stunned for a second, then grabs her sandal and smacks him across the face with a force that echoes in the room. The audacity needed to say all this nonsense is one thing, but the look on his face after she strikes him? Priceless. He touches his cheek, completely baffled, blinking like he didn't see that coming. And honestly, he probably didn't. Eun-Seol doesn't wait for him to process. She's already firing off. Does he even consider himself human? Does he have any idea how hard she's worked to survive, to scrape by while everything around her crumbled? Tears stream down her face, but she doesn't stop. How dare he show up here, throwing his weight around and talking about her life like it's some chessboard he controls. Do-yoon just stands there, quiet now, like her words don't quite reach him. He touches his cheek again, muttering something about a shoot tomorrow. That's all he cares about, apparently. He flicks the card toward her, the movement casual, almost lazy. Think about it, he says, as if she hasn't already made up her mind. His tone is icy as he tells her to stay away from Dan Yi-Hyuk, and then he walks toward the door. Her head snaps up at the mention of Dan. Now he's got her full attention. Do-yoon pauses, clearly aware of it. He doesn't look back but keeps talking, his voice lower now, almost conspiratorial. He knows she met up with Dan a few days ago, and that makes him nervous. She can see it in the way he clenches his fists, in the slight tremor in his voice when he tells her they can't afford to let Dan know the truth. If that incident from 15 years ago ever comes out, it'll destroy them both. The door closes behind him, leaving her alone with her thoughts, the card lying forgotten on the floor. Hours later, Eun-Seol is on the sofa in the dark, the glow from the TV the only light in the room. She's still in the same clothes, too drained to move. The announcer's voice fills the silence, introducing none other than Lee Do-yoon, the prestigious actor. She watches his face flash across the screen, so polished and perfect, and her mind drifts back to when things were simpler. Or so she thought. Her oppa wasn't this cold, ruthless person back then. She remembers him crying, clinging to her because she was the only one by his side. She had always been there for him, time and time again, no matter what. Now, she feels like she's staring at a stranger. Seol Eun-Seol lies in bed, staring at the ceiling, her thoughts swirling. Did Do-yoon really not realize it was her birthday when he stormed into her house? He punched in her birth date to unlock the door. Her birth date. Not once did it click. She switches off the TV and turns over, hoping he didn't remember. It's easier that way. If he forgot, it's just another layer of indifference. But if he remembered and still came at her like that, she's not sure her heart can take it. The next morning, sunlight seeps through the curtains, nudging her awake. She shuffles around the house, not ready to start the day, but unable to stay in bed. Her eyes fall on the card he left behind, still lying where he tossed it last night. His words replay in her mind like a bad song she can't turn off. She picks it up, studies it for a moment, and then walks straight to the trash. It lands at the bottom of the bin with a satisfying thud. No way is she letting him control her life. Not now, not ever. She takes a deep breath, feeling a flicker of determination. Meanwhile, at Dan Yi-Hyok's place, the man himself is in his private gym, working up a sweat. His manager walks in, holding a phone in one hand and a clipboard in the other, his face tense. Dan's halfway through a set of pull-ups, barely glancing over as the guy starts talking about some online post. Apparently, someone's claiming Dan supports the ABC girls, and his manager isn't thrilled about it. Dan drops from the bar, grabbing a towel and wiping his face, completely unfazed. "Not news to me," he says casually, like it's no big deal. His manager, however, isn't letting it slide. He reminds Dan that this is supposed to be his break, time off to take care of his grandfather and stay out of the spotlight. The manager presses, asking what people will think if Dan suddenly backs the group. Instead of answering, Dan tosses the towel over his shoulder and smirks. "Hey, do you think I'm handsome?" The manager stares at him, deadpan, clearly not in the mood for jokes. But Dan's having fun now, leaning into the moment. He throws on a serious face, nodding solemnly. "All right, I get it. I'll be more careful next time, promise." But then, as his manager grumbles something under his breath and heads for the door, Dan's expression shifts. A small smile creeps across his face, unbidden. His thoughts wander back to the last time he saw Seol Eun-Seol. It's a quick moment, a flash of her in his mind, but it lingers just enough to spark something in him. Whatever it is, it's clear Dan Yi-Hyok isn't as indifferent as he pretends to be. Dan Yi-Hyok's manager brings up the contract renewal. Dan waves it off, says he'll do it, no fuss. His manager looks at him like he's crazy, asking if he even realizes how much noise he's making lately. The rumors about him possibly taking over NB Group and handling Chairman Dan's legacy are everywhere. Dan couldn't care less, says it's family tradition for the grandson to inherit, but he's not into running the business. His manager looks even more confused, asking why Dan's wasting his break on babysitting his grandfather if he doesn't want the chairman position. Dan admits it's not about the company, it's about his mom. That shuts his manager up, leaving him to guess what Dan's really after. Everyone knows the story of Dan Lena, Chairman Dan's favorite child and a free spirit. She was an artist who lived by her own rules until she fell for a man the chairman hated. The guy had nothing, no family, no status, no money, but Dan Lena loved him. When her father refused to accept it and tried to set her up with someone else, she ran away. She ended up in Morocco, gave birth to Dan Yi-Hyok, and tried to start over. Not long after, she was killed under mysterious circumstances. It's the kind of tragedy people gossip about but never solve. 6 bodies are found in a house in Morocco, and the news spreads like wildfire. 2 of the victims are Korean, one of them being the renowned painter Dan Lena, second daughter of the NB Group chairman. Her death shakes everyone. Among the chaos, there's one survivor, a little boy, Dan Yi-Hyok, her son. He's just a kid, but he's the key witness to the crime. Under police protection, he points his finger at the culprit without blinking, Uncle Brandon. The man had been threatening his mom, trying to squeeze money out of her. Not long after, the truth comes out. Brandon admits everything. Turns out, he found out about Lena's rich family background and decided to exploit it. But things got ugly when Lena stood her ground. Justice is served, but it's a hollow victory. Lena is gone, and her son is left with no parents and no home. With nowhere else to go, little Yi-Hyeok is sent back to Korea. His grandfather, Chairman Dan, is waiting at the airport. It's not just an impulsive act of kindness. Lena had written a letter, her final words to her father, and it's the reason the chairman accepts the boy without hesitation. The letter is simple but heartfelt. Lena admits she might have been reckless, running away and cutting ties, but she never stopped thinking about her family. She talks about becoming a mother and how it made her understand her father's love. She writes about Yi-Hyeok, her son with the adorable smile, and how she hopes her father will love him with an open heart. The chairman reads the letter over and over again. It's beautiful but heartbreaking. Lena's words are filled with hope, but now they carry the weight of her absence. As Yi-Hyeok stands in front of him, the chairman realizes this boy isn't just his grandson, he's Lena's last gift. Chairman Dan made sure Yi-Hyeok was officially part of the family. He had his son register the boy as his adoptive child, switching him from maternal grandson to paternal grandson on paper. It wasn't just about giving the kid a home, it was about securing his future. With that move, Yi-Hyeok became a legitimate candidate to one day inherit the family empire. It was smart, calculated, and made sure no one could question the boy's place in the household. From that moment on, Yi-Hyeok and Chairman Dan shared a unique bond. They weren't just family, they were allies in their own way. Fast forward to now and things are complicated. Dan Yi-Hyeok, the rising star of Korea, has the kind of wealth most people only dream about. He's got the charm, the looks, and the reputation of the perfect son. To the public, he's flawless. Taking time off to care for his aging grandfather? Talk about wholesome. But behind the scenes, it's a different story. His manager, who's seen every side of him, is practically pulling his hair out. Sitting across from Dan, the manager looks like he's just swallowed a lemon. He doesn't buy the whole doting grandson act. In fact, he's convinced it's all just another one of Dan's performances. So, the manager starts, narrowing his eyes. What are you trying to get from the chairman? And don't give me that it's personal nonsense. Dan doesn't even flinch, just leans back in his chair like he's got all the time in the world. The manager is losing patience, though. He's juggling complaints from ad agencies who want their star back on screen, fans clamoring for updates, and sponsors threatening to pull deals if Dan doesn't start working again soon. You do realize this little family vacation is killing your schedule, right? The manager snaps. I've got clients calling me every day asking why you're not available. You think they care about your grandpa? Dan smirks, not bothered in the slightest. They'll wait, he says, like it's the most obvious thing in the world. The manager groans, rubbing his temples. You're impossible. Do you even have a timeline for when you'll be back? Because if this drags on any longer, I'm going to need a new job. Dan's face softens just for a moment. I need something from him. Something about my mom. Once I get it, I'll be back. The manager pauses, his annoyance briefly replaced by curiosity. But Dan doesn't offer anything else, leaving his manager to stew in his frustration. The guy gets up, muttering under his breath as he heads for the door. You better figure it out soon or I'm putting your face on a milk carton, he grumbles. Dan watches him go, a faint smile on his face. To everyone else, it might look like he's stalling, but for Dan Yi-Hyeok, this isn't just about family or work. It's about tying up the loose ends of a past he's been carrying for far too long. Dan Yi-Hyeok tells his manager to handle the agencies however he wants. They can wait or find someone else. He asks if there's anyone on his level in the industry. No response. He knows he's unmatched. His manager quietly fumes, wishing the country could see this side of Dan, but he's not about to sabotage his career. A knock interrupts the moment. Chairman Dan wants to see him. Dan smirks, saying he'll get what he wants today, so his manager should stay put. The manager feels uneasy, but brushes it off, telling himself not to panic. In the study, Dan and the chairman are playing chess. Dan suddenly knocks the board over, demanding to know what the chairman's up to. The old man stays calm, saying he'll give him what he wants. Dan's face shifts, not in relief, but in horror. He mutters that he's screwed, clearly not thrilled with the offer. The chairman remains stoic, while Dan's frustration boils over. It's clear whatever the chairman is offering isn't what Dan had in mind. The tension grows, and Dan realizes he might have just walked into a trap he can't escape. A few minutes ago, Yi-Hyeok and Chairman Dan had been playing chess, the pieces clicking as they moved. Then, out of nowhere, Chairman Dan asks about Dan's work with Charon Entertainment. He wants to know if taking care of him is getting in the way of his career. Dan grins, keeping his cool. "I came here to avoid any issues with public opinion," he says, and the chairman nods, impressed. He sets a piece down, praising Dan for always being on top of things. Dan chuckles and humbly brushes it off, saying the chairman's just being too kind. But the old man isn't having it. "Don't pretend you're innocent," he says with a smirk. It's clear he's got Dan figured out. The tension thickens as Chairman Dan says he knows Dan wants something from him, though he's still trying to figure out exactly what that is. Dan nods like it's no surprise. Of course, the old man would see through him. He's not exactly in a position to outsmart Chairman Dan. "All I want is the Seonjae Art Museum," Dan says, keeping his voice steady. The chairman pauses, eyes narrowing, then gives a slow nod, agreeing to give him the management rights to the headquarters. Dan studies him carefully. Something feels off, though. Chairman Dan goes on, casually tossing in that if that's not enough, he'll also give him affiliate stakes because, to his knowledge, there's no better candidate for CEO than Yi-Hyeok. Dan isn't impressed. "I don't want it," he says flatly. The chairman looks at him like he's confused. "I want something else." He doesn't need any of that corporate stuff, especially not if it means being tied down by his family's business. Chairman Dan persists. He suggests Dan start working at the NB Group next month, clearly seeing it as the perfect opportunity for his grandson. But Dan doesn't budge. "I don't want the management rights," he repeats, his words clear and firm. The chairman's face hardens, the words echoing in Dan's mind, "Don't feign innocence." It's like the old man's not even listening. Dan's starting to get frustrated, like realizing it's going to be a lot harder to get through to his grandfather than he thought. This whole situation is turning into a headache. Our guy asks Chairman Dan what his plans are for the Seonjae Art Museum. It's not just any museum, it's a piece of history that's been in the family for years. This art museum belonged to Yi-Hyeok's mother, Dan Lena, and it was the one thing she protected with her life. The Seonjae Art Museum is the only thing in the family that Dan Yi-Hyeok actually wants. He doesn't care about the rest. The family business, the stakes, the CEO position, none of it matters. He's heard rumors that the museum's profits are on the decline, and that's what really bothers him. It's not just a museum. It's a symbol, a trophy for the chosen successor. If he's going to get anything out of this family, it's that museum. Dan doesn't hold back, rejecting the management rights to the company over and over again. All he wants is the museum, but Chairman Dan doesn't budge. It's getting tense. Once again, Dan asks, "If I'm not getting the museum, then what are you planning to do with it?" Chairman Dan casually replies that he's thinking of giving it to Yi-Hyeok's uncle. That hits Dan like a ton of bricks. His uncle? Known for his chronic gambling problem? The guy who could easily sell off the entire collection to fund his next bet? That's the worst possible decision, and it drives Dan nuts. He's already thinking about how badly this could go. Dan slumps into an armchair, running his hands through his hair, trying to process everything. The meeting with his grandfather was brutal. It's making him lose his mind. Why is this happening? In a family like theirs, where personal choices are never their own, handing over management rights to the grandson without a second thought makes no sense. It's a bizarre decision, and Dan can't make heads or tails of it. Dan Yi-Hyeok is still sitting there, chewing over the thought of his uncle getting the Seonjae Art Museum. He's so wrapped up in his own head that he barely notices his manager walking up to him, handing him a cup of coffee. The manager looks at him, clearly puzzled by the tense vibe. He asks, "Why are you so worked up? What's the plan for you, huh? Are you going to quit the entertainment business to take over the NB Group? Because if that's the case, you might as well start thinking about your unemployment status." Dan takes the coffee but doesn't really respond right away. He's lost in thought. Finally, he tells his manager that he has no interest in running the family business. The manager's comment completely distracted him from his earlier plan to reject the succession. The manager presses on, asking why the chairman couldn't just pass the management rights to his son, Yi-Hyok's dad. Dan gives him a quick answer, saying his uncle's a freak, and he's currently locked up in a mental hospital, so that's clearly not an option. Then the thought of his uncle selling off the artwork again flashes through his mind, and he can't help but feel disgusted. That's when his manager brings up the uncle's sons, Dan Yi-Hyok's actual paternal cousins, the other grandsons of Chairman Dan. There are two of them, and Dan's face shifts at the mention of them. The first cousin, Dan Yoo-jin, is a prosecutor who's got a serious grudge against Chairman Dan. He's basically a walking enemy of the family after robbing the NB Group for a chunk of money. Chairman Dan can barely look at him without remembering what he did. Yoo-jin doesn't care, though. He's the type who said there are no relations before the law. He's definitely out of the competition for the company's future. The second cousin, Dan Yi-han, is an artist, but just hearing that makes the manager uneasy, even before he knows anything else about him. Yi-Hyok doesn't seem to like him much either. He mentions that Yi-han calls Chairman Dan bro whenever they talk on the phone. To make matters worse, Yi-han skipped out on the family years ago and moved to another country. So yeah, he's also out of the running. The manager throws his hands up, clearly baffled, and mutters, "What is it with this family? Why does it seem like all the weirdos ended up here?" The men sure are a strange bunch. One's a thief, the other's a free spirit, who'll probably make Chairman Dan's blood pressure skyrocket, and the uncle's a party animal. They sit in silence for a while, and the manager finally wonders what solution they're going to come up with. He gets why Chairman Dan would want to give the company to Yi-Hyok. He's the best choice. There's no other candidate who fits the bill, and the other grandsons are too messed up to handle it. Yi-Hyok's not backing down, though, determined to find a way out. He plans to wreck his image like the rest of them and hopes Chairman Dan will change his mind. His manager's not so sure how that'll work, but they start brainstorming ideas that lead nowhere at first. Then the manager starts to lose it, joking he'll need a part-time job if this keeps up, but Yi-Hyok shakes him out of it. A moment later, the manager has a breakthrough. Yi-Hyok's surprised, and his manager leans in with a grin. "I've got a plan that won't hurt your career, but Chairman Dan will be so disappointed in you, he'll rethink everything." Yi-Hyok's intrigued. "What's the plan?" The manager smirks. "A scandal." Yi-Hyok stares, trying to figure out if he's being serious. The manager suggests it'd be way more effective if the scandal involves someone the chairman can't stand. Yi-Hyok thinks for a moment, then realizes the key is who he's going to date. This isn't going to be easy. The plan is to date someone Chairman Dan can't tolerate, so he starts running through options in his mind. Then one name pops up, Seol Eun-Seol. She's the one who nearly killed him, after all. His manager freaks out, saying dating her would be weird, and he's not wrong. It's a strange idea. Yi-Hyok's not backing down, though. His manager may be worried about the mess, but this was his plan, so he's not going to let it go now. Meanwhile, Seol Eun-Seol is at work, drenched in coffee. Her boss, Yumi, is yelling at her, furious that she added syrup when she'd been told not to. Seol tries to defend herself, saying that her boss had told her to add 2 pumps of syrup earlier. Yumi's having none of it, though. She rants about how sugary stuff before a shoot puffs up the face, calling her unprofessional and terrible at her job. Seol's had enough of Yumi's crap. She thinks back to her time with the ABC girls, the only clients who really supported her. Yumi keeps going, demanding to know if Seol just sighed and looking at her like she's some diva. The other ladies in the room are starting to whisper, wondering why Yumi's extra harsh today. Seol doesn't care, though. She's used to it, but it still stings. Seol Eun-Seol stares at her boss, Yumi, in disbelief. The boss is raging about the coffee she didn't order, claiming it was mint tea all along. Seol's mind is racing, trying to keep her cool as her boss continues the tirade. She wants to scream, to lash out, but she holds it in. Yumi, as usual, isn't having it. She tells Seol to get coffee and new clothes since she hates what Seol brought today. Another insult. Seol feels like she's at the breaking point. her patience almost gone. Outside, she wonders if it's time to just quit. How many more of these daily humiliations can she take? Meanwhile, back in another meeting, Yi-Hyeok sits across from a man who asks him if he's heard about the recent marriage consultation the chairman had set up for him. The man's tone is serious, and Yi-Hyeok, without hesitation, acknowledges that Chairman Dan is clearly trying to set him up for the CEO role. The man agrees, pointing out that if Yi-Hyeok marries well, it'll help improve his image, making him more than just an actor, something that will definitely pull him away from the entertainment industry. Yi-Hyeok lets out a long, tired sigh, considering the implications. He asks if the only way out of his granddad's clutches is to create a scandal, and the man reluctantly agrees. But of course, it's a risky move. Going against Chairman Dan is no small feat. They can't afford to fail. The man hesitates, unsure if going through with the scandal is really the best idea. Meanwhile, Seol's patience is wearing thin back at the office. She's just had enough. Yumi's screaming at her, accusing her of making a mistake that Seol's sure wasn't hers. Seol tries to reason, telling her boss that she definitely ordered the coffee, but Yumi doesn't care. She hits Seol across the face, the slap echoing through the room. Yumi rants about how Seol should have worn a hat, questioning her confidence, and then comes the real kicker. She insinuates that Seol must be an orphan. It's the final straw. Seol stands there, trying not to break down in front of her boss. Yumi, for a moment, seems to actually wonder if that's true, if Seol's really alone in the world. It's sickening, and Seol can't take it anymore. Seol Eun-Seol can't believe what she just heard. Yumi's words hit her hard, like daggers straight to the heart. But instead of crumbling, she steps closer, demanding an apology. "You've gone too far," she says, her voice steady despite the emotional storm inside. She's not going to let this slide. No way. She doesn't deserve to be treated like this. Yumi just stands there, confused, asking if Seol's lost her mind, wondering if she's hurt herself. The audacity! Yumi asks why she should apologize, like she hasn't just unleashed a personal attack. Seol doesn't waste another second. "You're in the wrong," she says, turning to walk away, leaving Yumi to scream her name in vain. But Seol doesn't look back, not even a glance. As she walks out the door, she's greeted by a colleague who immediately starts pleading with her. She's heard it all before, Yumi's jealousy. Apparently, the boss has always felt threatened by Seol, and it's eating away at her. She's always been compared to Seol, styled to look similar, and it stings. The colleague says it's a shame that Yumi's been consumed by this jealousy, even though Seol's clearly the subordinate here. It doesn't make sense, but it's real. It's clear now why Yumi's been acting out. It's not about Seol, it's all about insecurity. The acting coach once asked for Seol's old child actor videos, which made the colleague feel like Seol was the true star, the one who could handle everything. Seol remains silent, letting the words sink in. What's the point in responding? Nothing can change the situation right now. Seol Eun-Seol is done. She's been holding it in for way too long, but it's finally reached the point where she can't just let it slide anymore. She tells her colleague, being understanding and considerate? Those words don't even belong in the same sentence as my boss. They've crossed the line. It's not just boss and employee anymore. It's a full-blown victim versus assailant situation. Holding it in isn't doing her any good. It's slowly eating her up from the inside. Her life has become one long, exhausting endurance test, and she's so over it. Her colleague keeps telling her to hang in there a little longer, but Seol can't. She lets out a bitter laugh. What's the point of constantly being considerate and compromising? What do I get out of it? She pulls away from her colleague, her patience finally running dry. Enough is enough. She's had it with the harassment. Her colleague, feeling sorry for her, says maybe it's time for Seol to move on, go somewhere else, start fresh, and establish herself. It's tough watching her go through this day after day. Seol Eun-Seol knows her colleague's right. She's been enduring Kim Yumi's cruelty for too long. Even her colleague says she wouldn't have lasted as long as Seol has. She appreciates the support, though. It's been a rough ride, but moments like this when someone's on her side make it a little bit easier to bear. Seol Eun-Seol takes a deep breath, stands tall, and walks straight up to the highest table where her boss sits. With a calm but firm voice, she says, "I'm resigning." No hesitation. It's time. It's long overdue, but Seol is finally taking control. The resignation is well-deserved, and it feels like a weight has lifted from her shoulders. Seol Eun-Seol stands there, resolute. She wants out, but her mother doesn't even blink. "You're not going anywhere," she states flatly. "You're still under contract. $3 billion for breaking it. Can you afford that?" The words hit harder than any slap. "What? $3 billion?" Seol Eun-Seol stares at her, speechless. Her mother doesn't flinch, going on about how she saved her from obscurity by letting her work as a manager instead of an actress. She doesn't care about the stage fright that's made this whole situation unbearable for her daughter. It's a business, and she's stuck in it whether she likes it or not. "I'm not letting you quit," her mom says with cold authority. "If you try, I'll sue you." That hits like a gut punch. Seol Eun-Seol feels the weight of it all, her own mother treating her like this. "Do you want to be all over the news again?" her mom presses, the words calculated. The idea of more public humiliation is too much. She asks again, "What do you want from me?" Her mom's eyes are as cold as ever. "You want out? Go and make an apology video to Dan Yi-Hyeok." The suggestion lands like a bomb. Does her mother really want her to suffer through that kind of public humiliation again? After everything she's been through, the request is nothing short of cruel. There's no way. Not again. Seol Eun-Seol is stunned when her mother drops the bombshell. "If you leave now, I'll spill the scandal and poor Do-yoon will be finished," her mother says coldly, making the decision even harder. Eun-Seol can't believe it. "Do you even see me as your daughter?" she spits out, her heart heavy with everything that's been weighing on her. It's a lifetime of struggle, like the whole world has been against her from the start. Ever since the incident with Do-yoon's son, her life has felt like one big mess, and she's had to carry that burden all alone. It's like she's been stuck in this never-ending nightmare. Her mother doesn't seem to care, treating her like a pawn in some game. "You have nowhere to go," she says, like it's some kind of sick prophecy. "Even if you join another company, I'll make sure it doesn't work out." Eun-Seol can't hold it in anymore. "How can you do this to me?" she asks, broken. Her mother just keeps pushing as if she's trying to destroy the last bit of happiness Eun-Seol has left. The way she speaks, it's like she's a villain out of a story. But this is real life, and Eun-Seol can't escape it. When her mother tells her to think long and hard before making any life-altering decisions, it's the final straw. Tears fall freely as Eun-Seol realizes how much she's had to endure. She's tired, and her mind is racing with all the mistakes she thinks she's made. Why did she have to be born into this family? Why did she have to get stuck in this cruel, soul-sucking world? At a private bar, things take a turn when Eun-Seol sees Lee Do-yoon and Yumi. The surprise on their faces is almost comical, but Yumi's sharp tone is anything but. "What are you doing here?" she snaps, glaring at Eun-Seol. She demands to know what connection Eun-Seol has with Do-yoon, practically accusing her of something she doesn't even understand. Eun-Seol starts to wonder if there's more to this than meets the eye. Maybe there's something between the two of them. And that's why Yumi's been so awful to her at work. Yumi keeps pushing, her words cutting deeper as she rants about what she assumes the relationship is. Do-yoon stands up, his mood shifting as he looks at Eun-Seol. "Let's talk," he says, taking her arm gently and leading her outside. He stops for a second, turning back to Yumi. "Wait here," he commands. Yumi doesn't take it well. She's beyond pissed off, screaming his name in frustration. It's clear this isn't how she expected the night to go, and Eun-Seol's caught in the middle of it all. Out in the hallway, Lee Do-yoon looks at his sister with raised eyebrows. "Why did you come looking for me?" he asks, clearly expecting something less serious. She's not in the mood for small talk, though. "I came to tell you I've decided to leave the company, just like you suggested," she says, making it sound like the biggest favor she could possibly do for herself. The news seems to hit him well at first, a hint of a smile even creeping up on his face. But that quickly disappears when she drops the bombshell. Their mother wants a $3 billion penalty fee, or else she'll have to record another apology video to Dan Yi-Hyeok. She asks him, with frustration bubbling beneath the surface, to help talk their mother out of it. He looks at her, his expression turning a bit too casual. Can't you just make another video? You're not a celebrity anymore, so it shouldn't be that hard, he laughs, like it's just some trivial task she can easily handle. She's not laughing, though. You're a terrible brother, she snaps, the words cutting through the tension. She's had enough. You're out here partying while I'm stuck dealing with all this crap at work. And to top it off, you're dating someone who's been harassing me. Seriously, you're the worst. Her words hang in the air, heavy with truth. She doesn't hold back, locking eyes with him. Take a good look at me, she says, voice steady, but filled with something deeper. Do you think my life is easy? She pauses, letting the question sink in. If ruining someone's life was really that simple, don't you think I'd have done it by now? What's stopping me from ruining yours? There's something almost dangerous in her tone now, a flicker of something dark in her eyes. It's like she's on the edge, ready to snap, and she's not sure where this path might lead her. She's pushing him, challenging him to understand just how far she's gone. I wouldn't keep tolerating you just because we're family. You and Mom never saw me as family, did you? So why should I care about you? Her words hit him harder than he expected. He's stunned, staring at her as if he doesn't know who she is anymore. She's never sounded like this before, not with him. She doesn't give him a chance to speak. I've done everything for you. Everything, she continues, voice cracking a bit with emotion. I got blamed for almost taking out Dan Yi-Hyeok, and I couldn't even ask for help. I had to survive on my own, through all of it. And you're sitting here doing nothing. She lets the silence stretch between them, her words hanging like a challenge. What's he going to do now? Does he even care? She demands he treat her right now, or she'll blow everything up when she meets Dan Yi-Hyeok. It's her last bit of affection for him, and she stands her ground. She tells him she won't work starting tomorrow, so he'd better persuade their mom or things will go up in flames. Storming off, she leaves him speechless, confused, and stuck in his thoughts. She turns back, demands his card, and says she'll use it for now before walking away, leaving him lost. Outside, it's raining, and Seol Eun-Seol is overwhelmed by the weight of everything. The rain falls, but she feels responsible for it all. The exhaustion and frustration pile on. She's so used to apologizing for things she didn't do that even the rain feels like her fault. She doesn't even feel like crying. Everything's just too much, and as she walks, trying to keep it together, someone steps up to her. It's Dan Yi-Hyeok, of all people. He greets her like it's just another day, and she wonders what kind of timing this is. She wonders why he's here now, but doesn't ask. He notices how bad she looks and asks if she's okay. She snaps at him, telling him to leave because it's none of his business. He doesn't argue, he just stands there. He tells her it's not his business, but that maybe, just maybe, on a rainy day, when no one's around, it's okay to butt in. He steps closer and says, "What if I made it my business tonight?" Her mind races. What does he mean by that? Then he adds something that makes her freeze. He says he feels in his gut that she wasn't the one who tried to take him out. But then he asks, was it really her? How did he know about that? Why is he bringing it up now? He's getting too close to something, and she doesn't know how much of it is a coincidence. She tries to keep her composure as he talks about how he's piecing things together, and she wonders how far he's already gone in figuring everything out. Could he be planning something? If you're eager for the next chapter, drop a comment expressing your interest in a part 2. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated. Until next time, ciao.